Hi, my name is Kristin. I go by Urbanheart, it's my business name. And you are at the Unseen Art Show. It's a collaboration with myself and David and Doug. David owns the sculpture studio, and Doug Gilbert is the photographer that I work with during the collaboration. And behind me I have a couple pieces that I created specifically for the show. This one represents bliss, and we did that by body painting a model in the theme of butterfly. On the other side is a piece called Depression. It's to contrast the bliss painting, and we painted the model to look like a moth. And how we went about making these pieces, we knew that we were going to deal with contrasts of emotions. So for this collection we chose bliss and depression, and we represented those by doing body paint photo shoots with Doug Gilbert and at his studio out in Machosen. I had the paintings done already of the moth and the butterfly, which we used for the background for the photo shoot. And then when the photo shoot was done, Doug printed the images and I got to incorporate them right into the paintings. So it's a fusion of the photography and the paint.
Can you tell us about your body painting?
Yeah, sure. I've been body painting for about 2.5 years. I started painting people at the Zombie Walk a couple years ago. My dad had just bought me an airbrush as a gift. He's always wanted me to paint on his car, which is like a 51 souped up coupe. And so I had my airbrush and we went out to Zombies, and there were so many photographers there that gave us some awesome feedback about how we looked that I thought I would just try painting some people. And every time I painted somebody, I got invited to do a new photo shoot with a new concept, and all of a sudden I find myself being a body painter. Yeah, and it's such an amazing experience. I get to work with all sorts of different creatives, from models to performers to actors and musicians. I really love working on people more than working on canvas sometimes, because it's really energetic. We're creating something together, and we give energy back and forth, and then so it's really a collaboration from the beginning. And then once you incorporate either a videographer or a photographer, it becomes this whole other kind of art. So it's a very collaborative process. Yeah. So I also do live painting at events, primarily at Sunset Room, which is an arts and music space, and also at different festivals and things like that. This piece right behind me I created at Sunset Room, and it was inspired by music and layers of music, and color, of course. I was also thinking about the theme of spiritual transformation and what that might look like to somebody. So I've included different elements that relate to a story. I keep the story kind of loose so that each person viewing the painting can make the meaning up themselves. And then I use my airbrush and different mediums to build the layers and tie all the pieces together like a puzzle. And I like pretty things. Hi, Doug, just wondering, what's your favorite piece in the show?
Oh, I have several of them. This is one of them. It was, of course, Kristin did the fantastic body painting, but the theme was a light and dark, and the model wasn't posed in those particular poses to go together, but I discovered later after the shoot that they actually worked together, and sort of came up with the concept of the gods playing craps with the world, and the dark figure sort of enticing the lighter figure to roll the world towards them. So now you get it. Yeah. So it's been fun, and David suggested the theme of clocks. So it was fun I photographed a bunch of clocks, and it was fun to come up with these themes like this in this one. So again, the model didn't pose that specifically for that concept, but I sort of got the idea after seeing her pose of the time sort of dripping, slipping away through her hands. Yeah.
So in every photography that you create, you see first, in this case, for example, you see the pose first and then you create the whole
Yeah, usually,
story.
there's usually a theme to the shoot before we start, and basically because it makes the model more comfortable if they have kind of a direction at the beginning. But it's, I think, so important for the photographer to recognize a point often, very often, when the model really doesn't have her heart into the theme of the shoot, but they have a different direction that they can go. And then you have to make them feel comfortable to go in the direction they want to go and encourage them to really shine through with what they want. And so it's, you never know for sure what you're going to get out of it. But it's going to be a good shoot if the model can really get emotionally involved with what they're doing. And then you start to get some good pictures. So after the shoot, then I start to come up with the different concepts of how to put them together with other pieces of art. Yeah, the model in this one, Kristin Urbanheart, she had never modeled before. So she was a little nervous, understandably. And so the pose there she did, it was a more static pose, which works really well with body painting actually, because once you start moving and perspiring, the body paint obviously runs and gets wrecked. And I printed this on a metallic pearl paper because of the vibrant color in the body paint and the gold leaf. In the background is an archway I photographed in Rome. Just felt it really worked with the elegance. And part of it's been really sharpened to bring just enough to have the eye sort of travel around the picture a bit, and other parts are darkened out to sort of give the eye a place to escape out of the picture. And I like it when the model is looking over actually towards the corner of the picture. I think that's a rule that you're not supposed to do that, but sometimes it's really it's really powerful because you just sort of wonder what they're looking at. It sort of adds a story to the picture. It gives the viewer something to think about of what the model is actually doing.
And you did another piece with this series as well, inspired by a Judith painting.
Oh.
Yeah, it's just around the corner here. Do you want to tell us about that one?
Sure. Yeah, I read a book this last winter, and one of the artists in it I discovered was Klimt, and I was really moved with his work. And this model is the same model as in the last picture, but so the way the hairpiece is, it looks like one of those caps out of the 20s. And she just has such an elegant look to her. So it was very, I was sort of inspired with just a very sort of straightforward look. And then there's other figures in the picture to give it more depth. I really like having a sort of a main theme to a picture to draw somebody in, but then having other things go on in the picture where, so you keep looking at the picture and you see more things. Somebody just a little while ago was looking at this and they really were drawn to just the overall image. And then they saw this figure down on the bottom with kind of a warning sign, and then they saw the hands. And then eventually they realized, well, what's this funny marking on her? And then sort of a skeletal look down the body, and it just keeps going on and on, layers and layers of interest. So it's a type of picture that you can live with for a long time. Keep seeing different things depending on the mood you're in. Yeah, this one I called November 11th, and some people will look at my pictures, they don't see what the symbolism in it, but this one, the model, it looks like she's sort of grieving. And so I worked these two poses together, and then these figures, they were photographed in Italy, these sort of warriors. And then the sort of the suggestion of a kind of a sun in the background or a moon is an actual back of a clock. So again, it's time as a constant theme. And then the soldiers kind of disappearing, sort of timeless wars over all the history of mankind. And then the the angel sort of considering all the wars that have gone on. So type of piece that I don't think anybody would ever buy because they wouldn't want to be reminded of it on a daily basis, but I really like it. This one I had a lot of fun with. I worked on this one for quite a while. It's called Lifeline, so this is the lifeline. And the clocks down below are actually stopwatches. So the person, and this duality is the dark and the light, the size of a person, which we all have, one on top of the other, and they're fishing for their stopwatch, which you're sort of born with. You draw your clock, you've got so much time on this earth. And then the constellation behind is a large clock, sort of ticking away. So I like that one. I usually give the models a print for working with me. It's always fun for me to see what the models choose. And this model's chose this print out of all the shots we did. Actually, I kind of agree with it. I think it's one of the better compositions from the shoot.
What about the composition is your favorite part?
Well, the background is actually just a close-up of her, some of the body painting. And I don't know, again, I like that, the emotion implied with it. And again, she's looking at the corner of the picture, which I don't think you're supposed to do, but I think it works for that one. Yeah.
Hi, welcome to the Unseen Show. This is a show with three artists, Doug Gilbert, Kristin Urbanheart, and myself, David Hunwick. And we're really excited about this. The whole concept behind this show was that we worked collaboratively. So we met, we discussed some ideas, and then we basically formed all of the artwork that you're going to see today. And it's a common thread that goes through it in terms of we've used the same models, some of the concepts of time and change and how that affects our lives and other people's lives are elements that you'll see in all of the work. So we're really excited. And the other criteria that we set ourselves was that it has to be work that's never been seen before. And the word unseen itself has different connotations. So it's what you see and also what you perceive, and maybe some things that you don't see with your natural eye. And so it's really playing with that idea and making the viewer maybe ask a few more questions. So there's a lot of excitement about producing this, a lot of preparation in terms of photo shoots, and Kristin did all the body painting that you see in the photo shoots, and Doug was our photographer. And then I've used some of those images for inspiration for my pieces too. The show itself consists of sculpture, painting, and photography. And it's been open for this weekend, and it's been really successful. And we're hoping to maybe do an extension of this again in the future. So this is one of my pieces that I worked on. This is a cement sculpture. The model that you're seeing in here also features in some of the other photographs. And for myself, I'm at a stage where I like to experiment with different techniques in media. And the whole concept of time is a big thing here, plus elements of fragmentation and change. So I've tried to create that kind of idea that you just dug something out of the ground from Greek times or from another culture, but into the present. There's an element of a narrative involved in it too, but I'd like to really let the viewer come up with their own interpretation of that rather than me just telling them what I did, and I find that much more interesting. So this is mixed media, steel, cement, and I'm starting to incorporate clocks and time, which I think is something that is really meaningful to me at this moment in my development as an artist. Over here I've got some other pieces. This one is called Angels Watching Over Me. Again, we've got the time element and steel and cement, and then the halo behind there. And there's a certain mystique about the piece. Like when I'm creating them too, I'm not always being too prescriptive beforehand in terms of what I'm going to make. I kind of let the process itself determine the outcome. And there's a theme you see in a number of these where there's a lot of spiritual elements, whether they're praying or there's a halo which goes back to the kind of Renaissance depiction or medieval depiction of saints and so on. And I was heavily influenced by that. And I just find it interesting where I'm at right now just to explore that. So again, this is constructed out of cement and steel. This is another piece I'm working on over here. This is still in clay, so it's a work in progress. This is called the Pearl of Promise, and the inspiration behind this came from Botticelli's Birth of Venus. I had the fortune of going to Florence a couple of years ago, and then was able to look at his painting. And this is really about, a lot of what I'm doing is about rebirth and new beginnings. And this piece for me represents change and like a new direction. And so she was the one that was the goddess of fertility, the goddess that brought in all of the seasons and the things that we see every year. And this piece itself, when it's finished, will have this shell as well, and should be cast in like a pearlite finish. So it should be like the pearl of the ocean, the pearl that comes out of the shell. And so again, a work in progress there. Now this piece is called Live in Hope. I sculpted this a while ago and then reworked it again recently. This is really about breast cancer. And a former student of mine is basically modeled the face after, and her mother had suffered with cancer and had a double mastectomy. And she came in to model for the scar. This is for me a very powerful piece because I think I wanted to honor the struggle that people go through, well, women go through, particularly when dealing with issues like this. But it's all about being an overcomer. It's called Live in Hope. And I guess the inspiration behind it was that, life throws you a curveball, and yet somehow the human spirit digs deep and you're able to transition through that, but you are left with scars to remind you of the battles that you've had to fight. But it's really about hope. It's not about the negative aspect. It's about pushing through and being an overcomer and coming through the other side. Behind her back, she's holding a rose, which to me is a symbol of new growth and new life. And it's actually designed that you can actually put a living rose in there. And so, when one dies, you put another one in. And it's just a very powerful image, I think. And I'm hoping that maybe we can find a good home for this, maybe in a cancer institute or somewhere like that. Over here, I've got some of my painting. I started to get back into painting. I used to paint a lot, but then I stopped. Again, there's a very iconic symbolism going on here with the halo and the praying figure, but I wanted to bring a more modern translation to that in the way that I use the paint. And again, I'm just really experimenting, just dipping my toes back in the water again, so I'm not too sure where this is going to go, but I'm enjoying experimenting and taking it further. Another piece of my work called The Last Dance basically represents another thing I'm interested in, where you try and blur the boundaries between what is sculpture, what is painting. And in my drawing, I've always found it difficult to fuse what I draw with what I sculpt, whereas this one basically has elements of both. So I started to actually draw and paint on my sculpture. And I'm very interested in, again, the fragmentation of form and how that either could be perceived as something other than it was intended to be, or it could delineate the form that I've been trying to sculpt. This one, it just seemed to work with grey and white, so it's almost like a pencil graphite type finish. And again, there's a lot of fragmented images in the sculpture, which is something that seems to be a recurrent theme in my work right now. And again, I'm kind of exploring just the way that you can fuse the two media, because I don't really think that you can delineate sculpture and painting as necessarily having to be separate disciplines. So there are lots of common denominators where they can fit together. And so I'm basically just seeing how far I can push it, and maybe some of my paintings will become sculptures and some of my sculptures will become paintings. And I just like that idea of playing with that and just maybe pushing the boundaries slightly. This painting was called The Butcher, the Baker and the Candlestick Maker. And this was a collaboration with an artist called Arunima, and basically she helped, we actually body painted her, and then she presented, decided, where to put the figure on the canvas. And then I took that and basically developed it further into a painting. I like the use of multiple figures and just the rhythm, and again, similar to my sculptures, I'm playing with the fragmented elements. And again, this whole idea of things coming in and out of space, what is real, what is not real, what is seen, what is unseen, is very important to me. So again, I like to play with that kind of mystical element of things revealing themselves, and you're not sure if what you're really seeing is the actual thing or it alludes to something else. But it takes it to a different level, so it's not just about doing a straight portrait or a copy of something, but it leads to a more spiritual level where you start to question things I think in a more intuitive nature. And again, with all of my paintings, I set myself a really limited time frame, and I've deliberately did that so that I couldn't overwork them. So it's very much a very primal kind of response to the challenge, and then you stop, and then you leave it alone. So again, I like that process-based approach to work. I have a few other paintings over here which I can quickly show you. So this one here again is called Divine Caress. There's an element of vulnerability in this, but also strength. It could be a halo, it could be a moon. Again, the shape of this, it could be like a musical instrument, or it could be like an old Grecian vase or something like that. Again, I like playing with form, and there's elements of abstraction and symbolism. I'm heavily influenced by Renaissance work, but also medieval work, and so I'm trying to incorporate some of those elements into what I'm making. This piece here, this was based on one of the models that was part of the Unseen show, so you'll see her in some of the photographs and some of the sculptures. I call this Eternity Sunrise, and again, picking up on that ethereal element of time. And time, I think, is so important to us, and everything's measured by time. We decide what we do in each day by the minute, the hour, the day, the week, the month, and yet there's another element of time that transcends that, and I think it's the transcendent time that I'm trying to get in touch with, so that this eternity sunrise. So it's like we break things into moments, but time is continuous. And it's being able to transcend the moment and then step beyond into that other element, which I think is what I'm trying to do both in my work, sculpture, and my painting. And so this one's kind of alluding to that too, but still has a very kind of earthbound connection as well. Again, I'd like to play with the fragmentation. I've used some gold paint behind it. I like the way the light catches that and just illuminates the piece. And but also there's a lot of unresolved areas that I like to leave, so that when paint drips or it's unresolved, that's part of the process. So in some ways I honor the process, and it determines the outcome, rather than me having to work the whole canvas and basically take away that accidental element. This piece is called Rebirth, and it's a piece I've just finished. It's actually been accepted as one of the last 16 for the Kingsbury Sculpture Garden competition. And so it'll be sent out to New Brunswick, and then they have the big opening in June. This really started off connected to the Blue Whale project that I worked on in 2010, where we reconstructed the skeleton of a blue whale, and then I had the privilege of molding and casting the ribcage. And so from that I've generated these sculptures. So these are the casts from an actual blue whale. And I called it Rebirth because I like the concept of this whale that keeps on giving life, even though it's passed away and died, yet it's given life to new forms even now. And again, it represents change and new beginnings. So the shape itself, I think is very powerful, and it's like an opening to new things. And when it's displayed, it will have a nice space and it would rise up. It's probably about 10.5 feet, probably 12 feet with the base. And the simplicity is a bit deceptive. It's actually quite complex to make. But it's just beauty and simplicity, I find. And it's like an opening to new things, or a window that we look through. And I'm quite excited about this piece. And then we're just waiting to see what the outcome is from the competition. And I recently completed another one called Ahab's Altar, which is in a private collection in Victoria, which is a ribcage that you actually walk through. And it's kind of depicting the story of Moby Dick, the famous story, and then Ahab and his heart. So hopefully at some point we get to see that too. So in addition to the three artists here, Doug, myself and Kristin, we also collaborated with the Richard Marr Hair Salon Studio in Victoria, and they helped doing some of the hair designs for the photo shoots, and they came up with some very creative, innovative designs. and they have a school of aesthetics and hair design there, and so we want to thank them for their contribution as well.